And just like that, we are back. And Monday night, across the wire, right after we release our full card video, out is Shoot the Box Diego Lima's Allan Nascimento. And listen, Matt, I mean, Nascimento was looking to take Sumudaerji's nice, shiny number 12 rankings. So that's Monday. Tuesday, the rankings get shuffled up. Deiveson Figueiredo moves up to bantamweight because he's ranked all of a sudden with a win over Rob Font. Sumudaerji gets an early Christmas gift. He moves from 12 to 11. And that Christmas gift, it's just the gift that keeps on giving. He now gets an opportunity to take on number 10 ranked Tim Elliott, the former Titan FC champ, a guy who got an opportunity on The Ultimate Fighter. Season 24, he got it all the way to the finals. He got to fight for the belt against Demetrius Johnson. Came up a little bit short. And listen, Matt, last week we had a tough winner in Kelvin Gastelum. This weekend we have a tough nearly winner. He was a finalist, Khalil Rountree, up one fight from this one, taking on Anthony Smith. But Matt, when we look at this fight, I mean, Tim Elliott is last time out. If people will remember, judges David Leatherby and Daryl Ransom, 20-18 Elliott. And then you had Judge Derek Cleary, 1919, against Muhammad Makayev, one of the best prospects we have in all of MMA. Tim Elliott was on his way to beating Makayev until he gets submitted in the third round. So a lot to kind of look forward to in this one. Obviously, again, Tuesday to Saturday, it's a really short notice fight for Tim Elliott. And for Sumudaerji, again, another added bonus. You were getting ready for Allan Nascimento, who's a good fundamental Muay Thai striker, but we know how good Nascimento's ground game is. It's where his bread gets buttered. So in a fight like this, he gets to take on Tim Elliott, who trains at Next Generation in Texas with Chris and Lucas Brennan. We know how good Lucas Brennan is. 23 years old, 9-0. He started as an amateur at 17. His father's one heck of a coach. But for Tim Elliott, Matt, I mean, this is a guy, he was a high school state champ wrestler. He went to, of course, Labette College and then to the University of Central Oklahoma. He was a JUCO national champ in 2007. His butter gets breaded gets buttered when it is on the ground. So you know how good of a wrestler Tim Elliott is. And I have a lot of stats. I have this, I have that. I think one other added wrinkle to this fight, Matt, is that Allan Nascimento, we made fun of it, but he's 5'8.5" listed by the UFC. He's a tall, rangy guy, but he can get it done in tight. Tim Elliott's so weird to track down, to pin down. He's also a southpaw. So now you go from orthodox Nascimento to southpaw with Tim Elliott. And Tim Elliott, I know, UFC record, numbers on a page. He's 8-11 in the UFC, but he's really fought a who's who. And against southpaws in the UFC, Tim Elliott's 3-4. Sumudaerji's actually fought 2 southpaws in the UFC. He's 2-0 in his 5 UFC fights. But I went down and I looked at all the losses that Tim Elliott has against southpaws. Joseph Benavidez, he was taking him down and then he gets submitted. Zach Makovsky, who out-wrestled Tim Elliott. You've also got Ben Ten Nguyen, who submitted Tim Elliott pretty darn quickly off a takedown. And then Brandon Royval, which is just wildness in a fight of the night. So make sure you unmute yourself. I know the fans love these type of shows, but I know you're excited about this fight too.
I am really excited about this matchup, and I've said it 10 times. I'll say it another time. Like, the UFC does do a really good job of putting together exciting matchups on short notice, right? They could have thrown any other bantamweight who has no name value whatsoever in this matchup, but we're getting Tim Elliott, right? And I know Tim Elliott might not necessarily be in the prime of his career right now, but he's going to make for a really fun matchup. Sorry, I thought this fight was listed at 135. I know Tim Elliott is flyweight, but anyways, but for Tim Elliott, I do like the fact that he's one of those few fighters that I don't think we're going to have to worry about his gas tank, because that's always one of the first things you have to worry about when you worry about a fighter coming in on short notice, especially in a matchup like this. What did we talk about a lot in the original video? It was, hey, Sumudaerji has phenomenal footwork. He's got that great in and out boxing with those blitzes, but if you can hold him down, there are some liabilities in that defensive game. And for Tim Elliott, he might not be as lethal of a grappler with his BJJ. I'm not saying he's not. We know he has the submissions in his back pocket, but he can get stuck in some of those scramble fests to where they can be kind of 50-50 grappling. If we go back and even look at like the Askar Askarov fight, right? Like Askar Askarov might not be a name that gets a ton of fanfare, but he did a decent job in some of those early scrambles, especially in that matchup. I know we got lit up in the feet, but I thought he did pretty good in some of those grappling exchanges. And I think Tim Elliott knows that, hey, if I can grapple with some of these higher elite grapplers, I might not be able to go out there and shoot, bad double legs on Deiveson Figueiredo, because we know what happens when you fight a guy like him. But for the most part, if Tim Elliott's fighting guys who have any question marks, be it with their cardio, with their takedown defense, or with their grappling defense, we kind of know how his fights go. They tend to be these one-sided 30-27 type decisions where he really can showcase the wrestling and the overall output, because Tim Elliott to me has just kind of become the Clay Guida of the flyweight division, right? He's going to go out there, he's going to put on a difficult performance, he's going to be active, he might be a little bit more accurate than Clay Guida, right? But for the most part, you know what you're going to get with Tim Elliott, and that's why I think this is such a fun test.
Positive strike differential for Tim Elliott. And it is pretty good. He throws an average amount of strikes. He doesn't receive a ton of damage. The craziest part about it, though, his chin's weird, right? Like, he's had 19 fights in the UFC. Try and guess. We're going to do a fun thing for the fans. Try and guess what Tim Elliott's knockdown ratio is, 4 to against.
He is one of those weird fighters so you kind of put in that Julian Erosa category where if he warms up to the fight a little bit, he can be pretty durable. Well, there's a lot of fighters, right?
And they're on the same card.
Single them out. But if they get warmed up, then they can have a decent chin. But if you crack them early, they don't respond well. So I'm going to say like 3-4 to 6 against.
2-0. He's got a 2 positive knockdown ratio. He's never been knocked down in the UFC officially. And if you think of it, just a few fights ago, he's taking out Taira Lombeca. He's out wrestling him in the first round. I know there's controversy in the third and a little bit in the second, but he does a little bit of a dipsy-do, and then all of a sudden he feints a jab, overhand left, and he drops Taira Lombeca, who pops right back up to his feet. But Tim Elliott's always been a weird fighter, similar to Jamie Mullarkey, where numbers on a page, the knockdown ratio might be really good. If you look at it for Sumudaerji, in 5 fights, his knockdown ratio, 2-4 to 0 against. So it's the exact same. But Tim Elliott's one of those guys, really low hands, a lot of head movement, and he almost relies on it, a little bit too much, but he hasn't been chin checked. He doesn't get cracked as much. So he is a really funky fighter when you're trying to look at a fight like this and figure things out. No odds, Matt, and no Tapology, though. It's like this fight was just announced not that long ago. So when we do focus on it, again, for Sumudaerji, the last time we saw him really struggle with a big time grappler, I know he had that fight of the year back a year ago in the summer. It was 2022. Matt Schnell, he gets submitted in the second round. You don't often see 2-round fight of the nights, let alone 2-round fight of the year contenders. But when I look at this matchup, the only time I've really seen Sumudaerji struggle with a big time grappler in a high stage was in his UFC debut on that Ngannou Blades 2 card, and he's taken on Louis Smolka, and his defense to getting taken down was to throw more strikes off his back. He was trying to throw elbows. He was trying to throw punches. He ends up getting submitted in that fight. I would think that the grappling defense gets better over 5 years training in the States at Team Alpha Male, some of the best in the world. Clay Guida, you already brought it up. He trains there, the Darren Elkins of the world, and so on and so forth. But I haven't seen it in practice. So that's what makes this really, really difficult. Tim Elliott has low hands. He can get hit. Sumudaerji's a long rangy boxer. It's hard to offer you up a pick on this one just because we haven't seen it, and we haven't seen it in such a long time. I will edge scrappy old Tim Elliott in this matchup just because I've seen that skill set 19 times at the highest level. But again, it's a tough one if you're trying to offer up a pick. I can preview this fight for days because I absolutely love it, and I love the 2 fighters that are in it. But as far as a pick, it is pretty difficult.
I worry about one of those flash knockout type situations with Elliott, especially early in the matchup, because I can't stress it enough. What makes Sumudaerji special is probably his ability to go from point A to point B so fast, be it with the boxing, right? Because he's not going to close the distance with a ton of kicks. He's going to be all the way out and boom, all the way into Tim Elliott's face. And if he is able to clip him with some of those straight shots down the middle, listen, I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever if he's able to clip Tim Elliott, stun him on the feet, maybe get a TKO up against the cage. I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever. But I do agree with you. I think not only the wrestling, but the work rate of Tim Elliott too. He's not just going to shoot for one takedown, get it defended, and then just stop shooting for takedowns. No, he's going to shoot for more. He will be one of those guys who he might go, 3 for 14, but hey, at least he's going to go for that really high level of, or really high volume of takedowns. And if he shoots for a lot of takedowns, it's also good if he doesn't get them because it's getting his head out of trouble. And it's not going to mean that he's at range with a guy like Sumudaerji. So I agree with you. I've got Tim Elliott.
It'll be an awkward one. I'm sure Dana Castillo will get really, really loud in Sumudaerji's corner. He's got a couple of fighters on this card. 3.73 takedowns per 15 minutes for Tim Elliott. It's a wild, wild work rate. We'll see how that works for him at the end of his 30s. But Matt, both of us going with awkward MMA, Tim Elliott to get the win in the matchup. A lot of fights on this card. And listen, we've already had fights shuffled. Garcia, Costa, you've had fights added. Vera is going to be taking on Marcos. And of course, this fight, if anything changes, you can find us here on the channel. As always, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at Fight Night Picks. Listen, Matt, it's going to be a big time fight card. You're going to want to keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, we always say.
Let's get
Let's
into
get
it.
into it.